Welcome to Submitting to the Alpha, a spicy paranormal romance web serial. Dive into Isabella and Roman's sizzling shifter romance and experience the thrill of toying with an alpha like never before. Join the adventure now. We hope you enjoy.
Chapter 51. Isabella. Though the path to rogue territory was difficult to find, the trail of my blood made it easier. I led Roman's entire pack through the forest, so we could save Jane and Raj before the rogues killed them. Hundreds of paws pounded against the forest floor, thunderous, like the sound of rain, but this time the paws belonged to Roman's wolves. Wolves from my pack, wolves that I trusted. The closer we got to their territory, the more stray rogues were walking through the forest, rogues so weak that I picked them off one by one and didn't stop until we were near their borders. About half a mile ahead of us, the stone wall was guarded heavily. I stopped, and everyone behind me stopped, even Roman. He wanted me to lead because, I was assuming, he wanted to show me that he trusted me, that he wanted me back for good. The frightened look in his eyes told me that this was the most difficult thing he'd ever faced, but he didn't complain about it. We ducked behind some trees to stay out of sight. Just like I had done so many times with Riker, I commanded that the group surround the borders. There weren't as many of us as I had hoped, since we still needed to protect the borders at home, but I had to make it work. When everyone was in position, I turned to Vanessa. She was not the person I wanted for this job. She would probably fuck it up for me, but Roman insisted. "You know what to do, right?" I asked her. She gulped and gazed over at the wall. She had drawn moonflowers on her arm with Sharpie before we had left, pretending to be a lichen. "Yes," she said quietly. "Anything for Jane." I gazed over at Roman, who stood a few trees away. "You sure she's the right person for this? I can—" "She is." I raised a brow at him. She was the fastest runner in the Warriors, according to Roman. I didn't believe it, but I needed to believe it. She was our only hope. I pushed her toward the wolves and watched her walk toward them. Slowly, she approached the rogues. She was to get their attention, get them to chase her, so I could kill each one of them. When she was a few trees away from the stone wall, she intentionally broke a branch under her foot. Oops. Oops, my ass. Every rogue at the borders turned in her direction. They paused for a moment, then saw the lichen tattoos on her arm and immediately raced her way. She better be fast and not fuck this up. All she had to do was run all the way back to our pack and not stop once. She stood there, waiting. Then, just as one was about to snatch her, she turned on her heel and ran through the woods as quickly as she could. She whizzed by me, and I listened to that pounding of paws against the dirt. When they all passed me, I waited a few moments. Then, I hopped out from behind the tree, slapped a hand over the slowest rogue's mouth so he couldn't scream, and cut his throat with my claws, killing him instantly. I followed behind the group, picking them off one by one, while the rest of Roman's pack moved into the borders to fight anyone inside of the stone walls. Through the mind link, Roman gave the orders to the pack, the exact ones I had given him earlier, leading like the true alpha he was. Vanessa ran faster than I thought she could without faltering. After 15 minutes of running through the mud, the rogues began to notice that their friends were missing. One turned around, saw me kill his friend, and howled. The rest of them stopped chasing Vanessa and turned on me. She looked at me with fear in her eyes. "Go," I said to her. She would get killed this way. She shook her head and sprinted at one of them. Then she jumped into the air and sank her teeth into his neck. In a moment of pure chaos, the rogues turned to and sprinted at both of us. Foam dripped from their mouths. Rainwater matted their ratty fur. Corruption flared within their dark eyes. I bared my bloody teeth at them and latched onto one as he leapt toward me, slamming him into the ground, ripping out his neck, watching, only for a moment, as he cried out to the moon goddess and shifted into his human, dead. While Vanessa took on one rogue by herself, I took on the other two. Throwing back my hind leg, I kicked one straight in the jaw and sunk my canines into the one in front of me. They both whimpered, but I wasn't finished. They would not only pay for their sins, but they'd pay for Riker's too. My claws dug into one of their undersides, swiping over and over, creating gash after gash, soaking my paws in his blood. It was what I had trained for since I was 4, since Luna Rhea believed in me, since Old Man Beck used to tell me his war stories. Vanessa spit out a jugular, growled in my direction, then leapt over me to kill the last rogue. She tore his ear off, smacked her paw into the side of his face, and murdered him in cold blood. Vanessa stood over one of the dead wolves and looked at me, gaze lingering on my side. Though it was still bleeding profusely, I couldn't feel it anymore. All I felt was the potent urge to protect myself, protect Vanessa, protect my mate, protect my pack members. When we shifted into our humans, she clamped down on my wound to stop the bleeding. "How can I help you?" she asked, brows furrowed. I smiled at her and winced. Despite everything, she was actually improving as a warrior, and a very small part, of me was actually happy she was training. She could protect herself now. "Find me some pine sap. I'll be by the stream 50 yards ahead, washing out the wound." I grasped my side. With fresh stream water and pine sap, I washed and sealed the wound as best as I could. At least I learned something when I worked at the hospital. Dr. Jacobs would be proud. Growls from rogue territory echoed through the woods, and my stomach turned. The rogues that Vanessa and I killed weren't nearly as many rogues that chased us earlier. There had to be hundreds of them, hiding out in this darkness that Roman and his pack were fighting. "I need you to go back to the pack house and ready Dr. Jacobs and my mom for our arrival back home. Make sure they're waiting at the borders, and make sure the hospital has as many free beds available." She widened her eyes and drew her brows together. "You think that there are more rogues?" she asked, grasping my fingers. "Do you think Jane is okay?" "I don't know, Vanessa. I just need you to go. Please." She gazed toward the rogue's hideout. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She pulled me close to her, her strawberry scent comforting for once. "Bring Jane back." I nodded my head and watched her run toward Roman's property. When she disappeared behind the hundreds of trees in the distance, I shifted into my wolf and ran back to the stone gates. Outside of the borders, the forest was completely empty. I pushed the cold gate open to find a sea of dead rogues, soaking in blood and gore. After navigating through the bodies, I followed the sounds of Roman's growls into a 2-story stone house. People were yelling, rogues were falling, pups were running through the house. My heart raced, just taking in the pure chaos. Roman walked into the foyer with a skin and bones woman in his arms. Her arms were around his neck, but kept slipping down his bare chest. I had the urge to growl at her, but I stopped myself. Roman was just doing what I had asked of him, saving the people here. "Did you find Jane?" I asked him, brows furrowing together. The woman looked severely malnourished, her lips blue and her ribs poking out of her abdomen. He nodded his head and gazed back into the room. "Someone is unlocking her cage." I brushed my lips against his, sighing in relief. He was safe. We were safe. For now. He smiled at me and gazed down at the woman in his arms. "This is Michelle." My eyes widened at her. Michelle. This was her. The woman Riker raped. The woman Riker marked during heat. The woman he left in a cage to hide. Her eyes were dull and nearly lifeless. I curled my fingers into his chest. Find someone to get her home as soon as possible. She needs food and water and to rest in a bed. I smiled at her and walked into the back room to find the rest of the warriors. Silver dog cages lined the perimeter of the room. Raj sat in the smallest one in the corner, his naked body crouched awkwardly together. His face was bruised severely, and he had a big gash in his side. After finding a key on one of the rogues' dead bodies, I pulled him out of the cage and into a hug. "I'm so glad you're safe." Roman walked back into the room alone and tugged Jane into his chest. Tears were streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she cried. "I should have been more careful. I should have..." She gazed over Roman's shoulder and growled lowly at me. I dropped my hand from Raj's shoulder and tossed him a shirt from off of the rogue. Jane frowned at me and curled into Raj's side. He kissed her forehead, and I smiled. Mates. They were really mates. "Sorry for being such a bitch to you, Isabella," Jane said. "I should have thought more of you." Roman placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "We should get back to the pack and create a plan on how to move forward." Raj furrowed his brows at me. "A plan? For what? You've just killed all of the rogues." "Yes, we killed the rogues, but we didn't kill the man that caused all of this. But we would. Together."
You've reached the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. To get up to 4 weeks additional uncensored content, subscribe to the podcast at reamstories.com/Amelia Rose Audio. Due to content restrictions, explicit sex scenes will only be available through Ream. But if you'd like to continue listening to my free episodes, make sure to hit the follow button to receive updates.